Wonderful. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Holy Trinity Church here in Twickenham. A very warm welcome to those of you who've joined us live in the building, as it were, and a very warm welcome to those of you who've joined us from home, wherever you may be joining from. Thank you so much, and thank you for bearing with us just as we got the tech up and running. It's great to be able to gather together to this evening for this. The first of a series of 3 in our Autumn Theology series. Just to say, and this is a notice for those who join us in the building rather than those who join us at home, because it relates to making use of the facilities this evening. If you need to make use of the loos at any point this evening, please do. You'll find them at the back through the hall, the green room. We are just about to be joined by a ballet class, so if you do need to answer the call of nature, please do tiptoe through discreetly to make use of the facilities through the side door, which you can see is already opened with the light on. Thank you. Now, the course of this evening is there'll be about 40 minutes given over to a lecture, and then we're having about 20 minutes to open up the floor to field questions and for discussion. And we're going to open up the floor not just to those of you who join us here, but we know that we have quite a large following online as well. So I'll be trying to keep a track of those questions on the YouTube channel. Just to say, if you are joining us from home and you have a question that comes to mind, please do write that down as a comment in the comment section. If, however, you feel that after this evening the perfect question comes to mind, please do email them to me at vicar@httchurch.org, and we will begin next session with a question time. Well, I just want to begin by saying there aren't many institutions that survive long enough to celebrate a 1,700th birthday. And yet we give thanks to God that the Christian Church is one such institution. The Council of Nicaea was effectively the first of its kind in terms of scale, of an international gathering of bishops. So we are in fact here this evening to celebrate a board meeting. Now, I don't know whether that fills you with joy, but I'm delighted to say that Piotr will be able to guide us on our way over the next 3 weeks. This evening, we're setting out the stall. We're setting things in context as we hear about the politics and the history of Nicaea. And we very much look forward to the series of lectures that Dr. Piotr will give. Just as I see he's coming on his way. Lovely, excellent. But so we look forward to hearing about the history, the context of the Council of Nicaea this evening, the politics. Then we're going to think about the theology of the Council of Nicaea next week before we think about the legacy. But could I ask you just to show your appreciation for Reverend Dr. Piotr, who will be leading us over these sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, can you hear me? Yes, that's the most important. So I will just put my microphone here. And yet again, thank you very much, Simon, for this opportunity to be with us, with our parish, and many more friends online. What I would like to say at the very beginning is just explain my personal connection with the Nicene Creed. And the reason why I want to tell you this very short story, and it's absolutely authentic, is that I hope you will ask yourself similar question, or if you are online with your congregation friends, you can ask the same question in your own church. Basically, some time ago, when I was starting my ministry in my previous parish, I was coming with the idea of a certain a quiz or questionnaire asking people which part of the Sunday Eucharist service they find the most interesting, the number one, truly and really, something that will make them very, very excited, and which parts of the service they find the most boring. I mean, the part of the service that you will easily use a knife or scissors and cut off, actually, because you somehow can't relate to that part of the service. And I said that the options are, we start with the very warm welcome, then absolution, forgiveness of sins, then we will talk about the readings, including gospel, sermon, intercession, sign of peace, preparation for the communion, after communion hymn, and the final blessing. So inside of that also we had a confession as proclamation of a creed. Believe or not, the most popular part of the service during that questionnaire was Holy Communion and hymns, and the most boring one was actually the creed. And when I start to interview my parishioners, saying to them, well, tell me more about your choices, they were absolutely honest with me, and they said, look, being frank, actually we don't understand what is this creed about and how it is related to our life. So if you can tell us more about the creed, that would be fantastic. And that was the starting point when I was thinking, okay, I love early Christianity. I really like all those ancient debates, so I should do a little bit of research about the creed and then share with my congregation. So that's the reason why, gosh, some time ago I was passionate about creed. Right now I moved with my interests far beyond and further, but still I find this topic quite interesting. So today I will put an invisible hat on my head, and I will be a historian of early church. Next Thursday, I will be a historian of early Christian theology. And the final session on Thursday, it will be about link between theology and spirituality. I think that the final session will be a culmination of our reflection. So today we will focus on history of early church, particularly politics of Nicaea or time before Nicaea. So the first point is about that structure. The second thing which I would like to say straight away at the beginning is that actually we know a number of different creeds. And if I ask you which creed is this or that right now, you may be in a stage of panic thinking what he's talking about. All these creeds are confusing. So just to help you, I will mention three, including our creed. The first creed that we are familiar with is actually the Apostles' Creed. And it's quite easy to recognize because this creed starts with I, as if I was in the center of the word. So the creed starts, I believe. Then we go to our creed, which will be actually the topic for our reflection. And surprise, surprise, this creed starts, we believe, we believe. And the third creed, which is also used during liturgy, is much elder creed, kind of coming from 451, and this is a Constantinopolitan creed, which has a massive section related to Jesus' nature. And all these creeds were written in response to a certain debates, issues in early church. So let me reverse that story. It is not that, let's say, on one warm evening, somewhere in Southern Europe, Eastern Europe, a number of bishops and clergy will gather after dinner and think, well, we don't have our telly, we don't know anything about gardening, let's think about creed, what should we write today? It was on the opposite spectrum. It was the case of being challenged by certain statements coming from other Christians which rang the bell, gosh, we need to sort out, we need to find out the answer to that issue. So the origin of the creed was a little bit like fire engine or ambulance. There is a case, there is accident, some people are doing this or that, and we need to clarify our belief. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and the final in my introduction, is that actually creeds are very original Christian invention, because we don't have any example of the creed in the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament or any Greco-Roman schools. Just give you an example. In the Hebrew Bible, if you want to think about one formula which will bring together all Jewish people, it will be possibly the passage, Shema Israel, listen Israel, I'm your God. But this is not really the creed. It's just kind of like a little statement about our relationship with God, not in a technical term as our Christian creed. In a Greco-Roman word, the word that early Christianity came about and was, they were our neighbors, there were debates whether or not the soul exists after death, or the death is the end of existence, but nobody was writing down any type of formula, one page, half of the page, and so on. So what I'm trying to say at the very beginning is that actually Christian creeds are quite original invention. Whether good or bad, you have 3 weeks to decide for yourself. But at the moment, this is what I should say at the very beginning. So we start today with session number 1, Politics of Nicaea. I will do my best to be very condensed, around less than 40 minutes, but provide you with absolutely essential background for our second session when we talk about Nicaea. So today, not much about Nicaea. Everything will be about Constantine. And in addition, there will be one word, magic word for tonight. And this magic word is unity. And I will mention this word on a number of occasions. So tonight's word is unity. So let's start with my picture number 1. Thank you very much. Symbol of faith. That's something that we use very often, saying, well, creed is like a symbol of faith. Let me just explain very briefly the meaning of symbol of faith. For majority of us, symbol of faith would be similar to, like, for example, seeing St. George's flag and say, gosh, that's the symbol of England. Or you are in a foreign country and you can see green cross as a possibly symbol of pharmacy. So if I have a headache, I'm just looking around, where is this green cross? Well, when we think about creeds in early Christianity, they have a slightly different meaning of the Greek term symbolon. And I want to tell you a story, a very brief one. In ancient Greece, when people were making deal, accepting some kind of agreement and expressing their identity, they were using ancient tokens, usually various objects. It could be part of a Greek vase, porcelain, broken, and one person who is taking part in that deal will take one piece, and the second person who is taking part in that deal will take the second piece. And then, as a symbol of their agreement, they will remember that if we put these two pieces together, we are in agreement. This is part of our unity. This is very important when we think about the nature of Christian creeds, simply because they were composed, written down, as a reflection of that identity and unity. Which church you are choosing, that's your choice, but if you go to a church on your holiday journey and you find out that they are using actually the words of the same creed, you as an individual, as a pilgrim, you are bringing to this church your peace, and they as a congregation, they welcome you because their peace matches your peace. And that's amazing unity, because now you can think about your own journey over holidays when you go to a place, hear the service, waiting for the creed, and you can say, oh gosh, I feel at home, because actually the gospel is similar or familiar, and also the creed, the structure is also quite similar. So this is something which I would like to start with, this kind of explanation. What is the term of that symbolon as a symbol of faith in relation to a wider tradition? So let's start now with the picture number 3. This is original diversity of early Christian groups. I illustrate my presentation with a number of books. Not that I'm paid by the authors and they want to sell these books. It's just I found these books very helpful in my research, in my thinking about early Christianity. So what I want to say is, from the very early stage, followers of Jesus were diverse in their expression of their understanding of identity. So just I gave you a couple of examples, and because of time I will not comment on each one of these. By the way, throughout my presentation, I will leave you with number of open doors or windows. It means basically that I will say something and they say to you, if you want to know more, please ask me in a time of questions. So this will be opportunity to us to get the question, think of a moment and say to yourself, okay, I would like to explore actually that further. So I will ask him the question that he didn't answer during that presentation. So yet again, my first illustration here is about Christian diversity. We've got some followers of Peter and James, some people who settle in Jerusalem, some people who are on move, like for example, Paul, the Apostles, some incredible books which are still difficult to understand, Book of Revelation, which is, for example, mentioning Ephesus, but is not mentioning Paul in Ephesus. A big question, why Paul is not mentioned in Book of Revelation. Then we've got scriptures which are rediscovered recently and are best-selling books about Christianity or even Testament, like Gospel of Thomas. But yet again, different Christian community, different understanding of the role of Jesus. There were also followers of certain Marcion, who was with a sharp knife cutting Old Testament with the old Jewish God from the New Testament, the God revealed by Jesus. And for him, that cutting was very essential for Christian identity. Of course, this individual Marcion found a massive response from other Christians saying that that distinction, that separation between Old and New Testament is wrong. And there were also Christians, like in this case, certain Valentinius, who was coming to Christianity through higher education, who was coming to Christianity through philosophical school of thought, and he brought with himself the whole apparatus of understanding who are Christians in this world. So this is a first illustration of that diversity, and if I may ask for slide number 3, another way of seeing that early Christian diversity is through leadership. And I'm just pointing out to a couple of examples. For example, some Christians will gather around certain leaders with authority, like Ignatius. Other Christians would prefer to gather around a charismatic individual, prophet or prophetess. They were called New Prophecy or Montanism. There were Christians who were gathered around the tomb of a martyr. That would be the case of certain martyrs in Rome, for example. Already mentioned some Christians who preferred mystical tradition, and that would be the Gospel of Thomas. Christians inspired by outstanding teacher, intellectual, that would be the case of Christians in Alexandria. And also, soon, there will be the case of Christians who will follow very particular individual, either monk or nun, those people who will be living in the desert. But what I'm trying to say at the very beginning of my presentation is that the 1st, 2nd century, 3rd century, it's diversity of Christian paths, diversity of Christian groups. So we are talking about Christian diversity, but the obvious question is how we or how they, Christians, were seen by their neighbors, especially by people coming from Greco-Roman culture. And now I would like to give you a couple of examples. That perception was very negative. And there were many reasons why early Christians were perceived in a very negative way. I've selected 3 examples, but there is more. First and foremost, let's talk about ancient mentality. 2,000 years. Ancient mentality was based at least on 2 principles. The first one was, what is new is dangerous and bad. So we preferred old tradition. Don't trust anything that is new or recently invented. Secondly, the world is hierarchical. And of course, 2,000 years ago, that hierarchy was illustrated with a male aspect, dominant, all over female aspect, and that's the hierarchy of the world. So, for example, some Roman historians very easily were able to find out about Christians, we know what they are saying, that their Savior was crucified under Pontius Pilate. We know everything about Pontius Pilate. His career was not the top because he ended up in Palestine instead of, for example, Spain. But we can calculate more or less when this Jesus was crucified. Was crucified recently. Is there any good coming from a recent new invention, almost superstition? No. So that's the reason why we have to be very careful when we are dealing with Christians. Another historian, Tacitus in this case, would say, well, look at these scriptures, what they are preaching if they gather together. They all the time are about the judgment of this world. They are all about coming this world to this end. But we, upper class, we feel much more comfortable living in this world. We have a number of our slaves. We are well established. So why we should listen to these negative people who are all the time convincing us that we all will be judged at the end of our life or when we die? Yet another one, Pliny the Younger, about whom we'll talk in a second more. He was the governor in a place of Bithynia in modern Turkey. Through my presentation, I will link the ancient places to a modern one. So if you go on holiday, you can say, oh, actually, I've been there. I know what he's talking about. So we are talking about the modern Turkey, northern, and he discovered that actually this is a quite new cult dedicated to this individual called Christos. And this new religion is actually avoiding any engagement with the public religious events of the city. And I will tell you about this in a moment. So they are really bizarre people, because just using modern language, imagine that here in Twickenham, we all are going, not me, because I'm not a great fan of rugby, but we are all going to see the game of rugby on our local stadium. And what is happening? A group of local people will say, oh, actually, you know what, thank you for your tickets and invitation, but this is not our cup of tea. So you start to be curious, thinking, why? Everyone is there. Look, even the mayor of Twickenham will be there. All representation of the local parties will be there. Why you are not going with us? So that was another aspect why certain observers, Roman observers, were putting question mark when they were talking about Christians. And then the next point, which is related to local persecution of Christians. And then emphasis is during the first 2, even 3 centuries, we've got some clashes between Christians and Greco-Roman neighbors, but they are related to the local city or area. We will talk in a moment about massive persecution of Christians, but right now, at the very early beginning, we've got a certain issue about Christians which raise tension in the local community. And we've got this example of a letter asking for advice to the emperor by this local governor, who is saying, I'm so sorry, sir, that I'm disturbing you, but could you please help me and advise how should I deal with these local people called Christians? What should I do with them? Because there are some complaints about their behavior, about their love of life. And Trajan is responding to that request, saying, first and foremost, don't chase them, okay? That's my advice as an emperor. If they are, just notice their presence, then interview them, try to find out more why they are not taking part in our public events, in the local stadium, in the local theater, on the streets. And then if they reject those so-called Christians, their connection, association with the Messiah, just let them go. That's not a problem. And the final one is anyone who is sending anonymous letter that his neighbor is Christian, that sort of letter should not be considered as a serious accusation. Why? Because the clever emperor and a number of people in authority were aware that one aspect why Christians potentially can be persecuted, rejected, was simple greed. The ancient law was working in this way that if you accuse a person and he is found guilty and then punished, you can take in possession what he has or what she has. So that's the kind of situation where a number of wealthy Christians can be accused of something illegal, illicit, and then the accuser will get in possession a house or vineyard or anything like that. But behind that concern about Christians, there's this element of greed I also would like to explain in another way, very simple one. Just imagine that we all live in the same street, and in our street there is a butcher, and he is dealing with absolutely lovely meat. And that meat is dedicated on weekly festival on Sunday to local deity. So everyone is going to this fellow to buy these sausages to dedicate on Sunday to the local deity. But at the beginning, 3 or 4 families are stopping buying this meat, saying, well, actually, if we can't, I mean, we would like to stop buying this meat because our religion, our belief is not allowing us to offer sacrifices to anyone else. Well, if you are dealing only with 2 people, that's okay. But if you have half of a street now who are following this new religion, then you become more and more anxious if you have this local shop. And that's a kind of illustration why in some area that local tension is emerging, because Christians are behaving in different way. And the final point which I would like to make at this moment is hugely important for the whole antiquity, even medieval Europe, although this term will find a new interpretation. The whole antiquity, Greco-Roman world, was based on the following assumption, which in Latin was called pax deorum. So that assumption was that God will respect and bless us with harvest as long as we worship our gods in a proper way. And that's the deal, pax deorum. So we as human beings, we are worshipping our gods in a very specific way through festivals around the year, and in response, we've got absolutely blessing of gods related to our well-being, to our farms, to our gardens, to our houses, to our peace. Well, this deal is good as long as there is no any disturbances, like, for example, flood, famine, earthquake, not even mentioning eruption of volcano or war. As soon as you've got this element of something strange is happening to our community, the first thought is, whose fault is this? You've got in antiquity very simple mechanism, but profoundly present in people mentality. If we worship gods in the right place and right way, in right time, we receive blessing. If we don't receive blessing and any type of cataclysm is coming to our world, somebody is responsible for that. We have to look very carefully who is responsible for that. The same mechanism will function in medieval Christian Europe. Yet again, there will be plague, and the first question is, who among our neighbors does not look like us or does not worship with us? The mechanism will be same. However, the invention or idea of that pax deorum is very ancient. And yet again, in antiquity, during the 2nd century, 3rd century, and so on, there were always plagues. There were always wars. There were always situations which needed some interpretation. And it was so easy to point out, we know who is responsible for the fire of Rome. Of course, Christians. Let's throw them to the lions. So that was the case of looking very carefully why and what sort of reasons we have behind different local persecutions. So in that context, I just would like to show you one illustration of a common picture or a representation how Christians were perceived by their neighbors. And this is the case of very famous Alexamenos graffito from the 2nd century in Rome, with inscription, with the letters here in Greek, saying Alexamenos sebete theon. Alexamenos worshipping addition his God. We can see that this fellow has one hand up as a sign of worshipping, and he is standing in front of something that is like crucified us, human being. No much, but certainly this kind of illustration is showing you certain anxieties, certain worries, certain criticism of Christian behavior. Then, finally, what I would like to mention is some common miscomprehension of Christians on our next picture, if I may ask. That will be the picture with the coin. Lovely. So yet again, if I may stop myself in this moment and say why I'm talking about this tonight, because I want to show you the impact of Constantine on Christianity, who is pulling out Christianity from the area of darkness, of being persecuted, of being seen as the people responsible for various disasters, to a main part of his empire as a now leading religion. So some sources of miscomprehension of Christians before Constantine. First and foremost, if Christians were rejecting, worshipping the emperor as a divinity, and each one of them had an aspiration to be divine, well, obviously they were atheists. They didn't believe in the same God as the rest of the community. The second thing, which was quite bizarre, was the very Christian attachment to Christ as the only Savior, Son of God. And for Romans, it was really rather bizarre, because if they look at their coins, they saw the clear identification who is the Son of God, as we can see on that example of Augustus is a Son of God, Divis Filius, and that's the reason why for them saying, well, there is another Son of God, not just then on the coin, was like, okay, what would be the difference between your Son of God and our Son of God, and why you are so exclusive that only your Son of God is a true Son of God, not our Son of God, which is actually on our currency, on our coins. So that was another issue of discrepancy. Then the Christian secret gatherings, when they, according to some sources, commemorate Jesus' death and resurrection by drinking his blood and eating his flesh. Just imagine for some, there is, by the way, if you can't imagine, there is absolutely beautiful episode, I think no more than 5 seconds, on a movie called Gandhi, when somewhere in India on the roof of the train, plenty of people are sitting there, and the local one is saying, oh, you are Christian missionary. And he said, yes, I'm Christian missionary. So you are the one who is drinking the blood of your God and eating his flesh. And he said, well, yes. But that was a kind of, what's the observation of somebody who is outside. Suddenly the stories about what they called the Eucharist, Thanksgiving. The issue that suddenly in Christian communities we are all brothers and sisters and we share the same love, although different term, agape, not eros, yet again was quite suspicion. Then the element which I already mentioned here, condemnation of this world, when people are enjoying summer, when people are enjoying beautiful views, and this notion or bit of nervousness about the end of the world, that was another thing which was very, very worrying. And finally, yet again, ongoing accusation, Christianity is a new religion. Now, our fathers' fathers did not heard anything about this tradition. So these were the kind of reasons why perception of Christianity by some Greco-Roman intellectuals, historians, even people from the street, was rather negative. Now we go to the final stage before Constantine, 2 big persecutions. The first one is happening under Emperor Decius, and this is the moment when I will open my first or second door today, and the second massive persecution is under Diocletian. Why I'm using the term big and massive? Because these persecutions are, let's start with Decius, are not local, just in part of the Roman Empire. There is a special order written by the Roman Emperor that we should search for Christians as a source of danger in our empire, identify them, interview them, and if necessary, punish them. And this is the time, fascinating time, under Decius, there is a special decree that all Christians who will make sacrifice will receive a special certificate. that they committed that sacrifice. And we've got among papyri a big number of these various certificates. They basically state, let's say, John Smith on that day offered sacrifice to our local god and recognized authority of the emperor, more or less. That's the kind of summary for tonight. And obviously these individuals will receive that certificate and then they can go freely. The issue of this persecution, they should stress, created incredible mess in Christian communities. Because at least 4 reasons why it was very difficult time for churches. First and foremost, you've got Christians who reject that kind of sacrifice and become martyrs. The second group are those Christians who reject that worship and they become confessors because they are arrested, but they were not killed. The third group of Christians are those who escape from one place to another. Among them were certain bishops. And the fourth group of Christians were those who failed and basically they accepted sacrifice. You can imagine that from pastoral point of view, now decided who is doing what and why and what's at the motivation is incredible task. So this first persecution is not just a persecution as a difficult time of killing Christians for Christian community, but it's massive administrative pastoral problem for Christian communities. Now, first open question, window or door. Why Christians were persecuted, not offering any offerings, not Jews? And this is the open window, open door for your thinking. If you would like to know, just let's go back. Later, when we have discussion, we'll try to find out why Christians were identified as the main offenders, not representatives of other religions who will also have a, let's say, monotheistic theology. And the second important question, why Decius himself suddenly is waking up in the Roman Empire, yet again, not because he's bored, but suddenly is thinking, I should sort out the issue of Christians in the Roman Empire. So why Decius is deciding to organize this first persecution, and secondly, why Jews were excluded from the same procedure. So these are the 2 questions, 2 open doors for your thinking. We can return to this when we have our discussion. The second big persecution is under Diocletian, and is well organized. He was excellent administrator. Has different phases. It's not just one document which will be copied. That's the time when people didn't have any emails, if I may say so. So they needed to copy the decree about persecution of Christians, send to the whole part of the empire. The whole empire needs to read this document and then start the persecution. So yet again, Diocletian is continuing what was happened during the Decius time, however with greater element of organization, with various phases of that persecution. And yet again, open question, what was his motivation as an emperor, as a Diocletian? And I will be very happy to talk more about this when we have time for your questions. So now we move directly to Constantine, if I may ask for this picture. So we start with the situation in the Roman Empire when Constantine is very young. First and foremost, let me just explain the colors. Diocletian, the emperor, whom some of us may be familiar with his legacy if we went on holidays to Croatia, especially to Split, when there is a beautiful basilica in Split. However, that Christian basilica is the original Diocletian palace that he built for himself for retirement. Okay? So Diocletian by background, he was from modern Croatia. He was emperor of the East, and he was, when he was in power, he decided first and foremost to invite his best friends, invited to be co-emperor. So this was the situation where finally we've got two rulers of the whole empire. Maximian in the red area, which is western part of the empire, and east part of the empire is ruled by Diocletian. They were friends. They were both officers of the army. They like each other. Then Diocletian is coming to a kind of conclusion that still it's a massive work to run the whole empire. If you think, okay, Diocletian, what actually you do when you say run empire? Well, one of his answers will be to collect taxes, because that's where life begins for the emperor, for everyone actually, taxes. But the issue was of collecting taxes in a very efficient way, so one of the points was further division of the empire, and that division of the empire is now going to Constantinus, and that's the one who is on the top of the red map, who is actually based in modern North France, including Britain, and his opposite colleague, Galerius, who is based more or less where is the modern Thessaloniki in Greece. So now you've got four co-emperors under kind of leadership of Diocletian. But yet again, this is the empire, how it's functioning at the beginning of that very important century when we will be talking about Christianity. And in this context, I want just to say that when we were talking about the persecution of Christians during Diocletian time, various parts of the empire responded with various type of zeal or degree of zeal. Eastern part was really ferociously persecuting Christians, while the western part was much more liberal. And yet again, just a silly observation, obviously if we think about the division between green and red, the line is not going straight. So if you were living in Egypt, it's not that actually the line will go through your village, and people on the left side of the street are in the Eastern Empire, people on the right side of the street, on the western side of the empire. This is just a kind of symbol of that division, which also will be then reaffirmed by to whom you pay taxes and what sort of language is dominant in your part of the empire. So when Constantine was born, more or less that was the situation, political situation of the whole empire. The four rulers, each one of them is responsible for a part of that empire, and one of them has a certain autonomy, and of course some of them will have ambitious children. And this is the moment when we will be introducing Constantine. So now when we move to Constantine, if I may, that's the date of his birth. The date of his birth could be questioned. Some people move the date in various directions, but that's kind of time of his arrival. So if I may ask for the next slide. A little bit about his background. He is born in the military family, so his dad is highly ranked officer of the army. His so tradition of the Roman army is within the family. He's brought up in the kind of court of one of the emperors, so he's quite well educated. Means he's able to read, he's able to write, he's able to write poems or speeches if he needs one, and of course he must be very good at counting as a general. Actually, that's a basic skill. What we know from some sources is that he was more fluent in Latin than in Greek, but that's not important. His mother became later very, very famous because she was the one who was searching for the cross in the Holy Land and who founded the cross. So what we know that the dynamic in the family was that mom was much more interested in Christianity later than actually dad, but that's the little detail. And now what is hugely important in his life is that he is brought up on the court of Galerius, so he's, let's say, in a previous map on that area of Greece, or Greek words, no doubt. And then he's called by his dad, who is not so far from here in York, to help him with the military campaign here. As soon as he arrives here, Constantine, his dad is dying, and the army, that part of the army, is proclaiming him Constantine as a new emperor, as a replacement of dad. And the army, because army likes him, proclaim him as an emperor of the West. And now is a big discussion, okay? For those soldiers in Britain, in France, where the boundaries of the West? Are they going as far as Alps, or they are going south of our Alps, when there is another ambitious emperor, son of the previous emperor, the one who was ruling and was allocated to this area by Diocletian. So this is a very simple question which very soon will create a massive conflict. So now what is happening is, if I may, I would like to show you the map yet again of the Roman Empire with little bit of movements. The arrows. So first and foremost, as Constantine is proclaimed as the new Caesar, he is moving towards France, modern France, to yet again continue his campaign against the local tribe, to be certain that his power has unity in that area. But he is well aware, as a young, ambitious person, that if his soldiers are shouting that he is the Caesar, the emperor of the West, he will not stop on Alps. Even further, he knows that actually Maxentius, who is now the ruler in Rome, he is not very popular because he is putting so much taxes on people of Rome that actually people from Rome are saying in this way or another, oh, it would be lovely to have a new emperor here. Well, you can easily imagine that kind of invitation, not direct, not official, to Constantine, is encouraging him actually to think, okay, the West is beyond Alps. I'm going to Rome. So he is marching with his legions to Rome, and this is the crucial event of our story today. He is marching towards Rome, has 1, 2, or 3 battles with Maxentius, but finally he is arriving to suburbs of Rome. And what is happening is he is expecting to have a classical battle with his adversary. So he will surround the Rome like Jerusalem in 70, and after some time the people will be starving, and finally Rome will collapse. He will be welcomed by senators, by everyone, as a liberator of Rome. Well, actually, Maxentius is thinking that he will fight him outside of Rome. He is settling the battle. He is fiddling with certain bridge, sort of cutting pillars in the right way, in the right time, thinking that when his adversary from north will cross over the bridge will collapse and I will win without any problems. And then Christian historians are saying something incredible. Suddenly, Constantine had a vision. There are differences about the vision, but the vision, if we can have next slide, this is one of the interpretation of that vision, life of Constantine, Eusebius, is related to certain sign, words, letters revealed by Christ, saying that actually this is a new sign for you in which you will win, you will conquer. Constantine is taking this sign as a serious message, according to Eusebius, and is marking the helmets and part of army gear with these letters providing him, Constantine, with a reassurance that God is on his side. The battle is fierce. Constantine has a very small army in comparison with Maxentius, but obviously numbers are speculation, because if you want him to win with Christ, the numbers of his soldiers will be smaller, while the numbers of the opposition will be bigger. So I'm just leaving this issue open yet again for further questions and exploration. But certainly he wins the battle in Rome, and immediately he's making deal with his fellow co-emperor from the east, Licentius, saying, come to Rome, we will celebrate together. When they come to Rome, as a way of thanksgiving, they are proclaiming Edict of Milan. From now on, Christianity will become religion of empire. And yet again, we will explore this more in a moment. But that's the but that's the kind of summary of the current part. Finally, just in case you would ask this question in your head, clever head, is that enough, Constantine, for your power, for your ambition, for your whatever, to stop your conquering? Of course, the answer is not. Because now he's emperor of the West, he's making temporal deals with Licentius on the East, but ambition is to have unity. Ambition is to have the whole empire. So now is only the question of time when Constantine will wait for pretext, for opportunity to move his army towards east. That situation arrives, and because of our timing tonight, I only want to say that in 324, finally, he also wins the battle with Licentius, defeats him, and now he is from now on the emperor of the whole empire. So the next picture is just very famous from Vatican. Raphael, the image of the vision. Constantine is in the center. You can see some signs on the sky showing him the letters that will bring him victory. And in a conclusion part of my presentation, just a couple of points, a bit of summary. So if I may ask for the next slide. Constantine policy in relation to Christianity. So yet again, after edict of Milan as a way of saying thank you to this mystical God one who is helping me, yet again, of course, Constantine was well educated, but not in theology. His theological knowledge was quite limited. He decided to continue to unify his empire. Unify, bring people together, not to have divided army. Like, for example, asking soldiers, are you still crying after Maxentius in Rome? Yes, you are. Oh, okay, well, sit on the left. Are you crying? Not, we are with you. Okay, sit on the right. In order to mix them together and show them that actually they are part of the same empire, he is making further steps to bring that unity in the empire, including theology. So our next Thursday, the debate, presentation related to Nicaea, is the continuation of the same process of unification of the empire, Christian empire. My little question, as once again, open door, open window, what was Constantine's motivation to bring people together? Whether or not his motivation was similar or dissimilar to Diocletian and Decius, that could be part of our further discussion. Final almost point, Constantine legacy, if I may say so, see the Faust. So on our slide here, we've got only 2 points, but I would like to mention 3 things which will stay with you for good. First and foremost, thanks to Constantine, we've got our Sunday, because he was the one who said, Sunday is free of work, we are worshipping the Savior, Jesus Christ, and our attention is finally moved from Saturday, Sabbath, whatever, to our Sunday as a crucial day. That's the first one. Second reason why we celebrate Constantine, well, thanks to Constantine, we've got our Christmas. He was the one who said, that's the day when we will definitely celebrate the birth of Christ. We are taking this pagan festival of the shortest night, shortest day, longest night, and now it becomes our celebration. And also, Constantine was one who encouraged the greater celebration in churches, liturgical, glory in the highest when we say or sing on Sunday. That's yet again that time of the year. The final picture, on pre-ultimate, if I may ask, the legacy of Constantine. I was thinking about the 2 images to illustrate a massive shift in that time. So we can say that spaces like catacombs or private houses were the main focal areas for early Christians. Some of them were hiding, some of them were scared to declare anything publicly. For celebration of Jesus' resurrection, death, they were meeting in houses. The baptism happened in that private villas. Constantine is opening the public spaces like basilicas to Christians. So just imagine impact on Christian liturgy, right? We don't need to sing 5, 6, 7 of us or 20 of us in a small space. Now we are going to the bigger space. Now we need a special choir. Now we need more smoke. That's the time also when liturgy will adopt certain vestments coming from Greco-Roman magistrates, all albs, stalls and everything, just to illustrate that this is now public space, public religion. So this is a massive shift around his time. His impact, the whole policy, which I find, well, incredible when we think about our sort of origin of Christianity in the context of links with politics. And just in case some of you would like to know, okay, what can we read to know even more about this time, I've just selected 3 books. All 3 are really highly recommended. Christians and the Romans, how the Romans saw Christians. You will see a number of different ancient sources, evidence how Christianity was perceived, the history of early church, including the time of Constantine, and the book of Robin Lane Fox, which is fascinating reading about that kind of richness of sources in that period. So this is what I wanted to say. I do apologize that it was longer, but we had a little bit of technical problem at the beginning. And if we can, I would now give you floor for any questions or comments. I think Simon is coming, so maybe we'll start with Simon even.
I'll grab the mic.
Oh, Mike, yes. You can have mine.
Hi there, Rob. Can I just check this is working? Check, check. Check, check. Well, give me a moment to find a battery for this. I'll give you an extra moment to consider any questions you may have.
Oh, I can share my microphone. You know what? You can ask the questions, and then I will pass microphone to Simon, and he will answer. Anything that you find sort of new, thought-provoking, or something that you never thought about from that presentation, or you think, gosh, we know everything actually, and that's.
Check.
But it's like, why did they find them so threatening? You spoke about, like, obviously they slightly destabilised the economy, so people couldn't necessarily sell goods to them because they were sacrilegious to the Christians. But I just wonder, because they're mild-mannered, they're, like, do public service and all of this sort of thing, I just wonder why they came across as so threatening.
Well, I think the answer is there were at least 2 different standards or contexts of persecution. The first one is mob, and there is kind of danger of raising emotions by mob very quickly. Sadly, we know that foreigners are really perceived as strangers and danger to our established order, so that could be mob. But I also mention the case of much more I would say, hierarchy related to the emperor, why an emperor would be interested in persecution of Christianity. And in a case of both Decius and Diocletian, what is fascinating, and I mean, there were at least 4 different reasons: economical, social, political, and psychological, why suddenly they exploded with that policy of persecution. I will start with psychological, but this is not the dominant one. Psychological is that for them, as children, Decius was more like a senator, while Diocletian was an army officer. But for both of them, in their old age, Roman virtues, Roman values, and Roman tradition was what put them in power. In a case of Diocletian, he was the army officer, but he was faithful army officer. He saw the symbol of the legion. He was thinking that the strength of the legion is not just strength of men, but also traditional Roman gods. And coming from that angle, if anyone is coming and challenging that Roman tradition, that individual or that group is very dangerous, because so far we can see a number of different cults and religions which have their particularities, but not openly challenging the authority of Rome. And this is one of the reasons why they were personally attached to that tradition as emperors. And they were thinking, well, this new tradition, or not so new now in the 3rd century, is undermining our roots, is in danger of derailing us as a Romans, as a people who are ruling this part of the world. So what I want to say is mob had different reasons why suddenly they turned on Christians. The emperors or elite or critics or philosophers, they had different reasons. But sometimes at the end of the day, there could be overlap. Basically, the mob will follow certain accusations coming from upper class.
And can I just say, for those following along online at home, we are monitoring the questions, so if you have any, please do write them down, and I'll be able to ask Reverend Dr. Piot. Are there any other questions from the floor?
Can you go back to your open door on the Jews and why the Christians and not the Jews at that point, please?
Thank you very much. Well, in that Christian context, I would say very helpful is a passage from Gospel of John, Jesus' trial, when the Jews are coming and saying, we have only one emperor, and that's the Roman emperor. It's not Jesus who is calling himself the king. What I want to say is, first and foremost, on the side of Judaism, ancient Judaism, was that it was ancient traditions. Romans and Greeks were familiar with the Jews and their particularity, and they were able to cope with one another. Of course, there were certain tensions. We've got evidence from Alexandria and Philo of Alexandria when there was a massive tension between Jews and Greeks, and there were pogroms in Alexandria. But on the scale, Romans were much more familiar with the Jews, their way of worship. And although they were worshipping the one holy of Israel, they didn't have any problems to pray for the emperor. And that was the one reason why they were on the side of the Greco-Roman mentality. But as I said, in practical terms, they were seen and recognized as an ancient vetus religio.
Are there any other questions? Yes, there's one from the front here.
So, with regard to Constantine, I always wonder, of course, there's the whole political aspect, and it helped him achieve his goals also, I'm sure, like you said, unity, etc. How much do you think in terms of actual faith and religious terms, other than the revelation that he got, or what was it that he received, that he actually believed, or is there any way to actually know the level of Christianness in him?
Yes. Very good question. So let's go to ancient sources. The issue about people like Constantine, as many others, is that we don't have any type of, BBC, ITV journalists just going directly to them and saying, Constantine, actually, could you tell us what motivates you? But first and foremost, we know from various sources that he was very religious or pious person. Before revelation of Christ, mentioned today, also earlier, still in France, he had revelation of the only one God, the Son. And what is interesting about this revelation is that, yet again, the whole message is that you are my tool to bring unity, to worship one God. In this early stage, that was obviously one of the Roman gods identified with the Son. But the message in his head was, I'm chosen tool by divine powers to bring unity to that Roman Empire and bring prosperity, and once again reassure people about Pax Deorum. So as he was religious, he easily could understand the Pax Deorum as a now Christian way of we will worship correctly one God revealed by Christian Savior, Christ, and the same benefits will come to our empire. Now, what we can say about his religious life, or not religious life, rather moral life, that even as so-called, after his so-called conversion, he was not very kind to members of his family or former enemies. Usually he killed them all. So his attitude was very often without much mercy, the Christian virtue. But yet again, it's difficult to judge whether or not it was the political for him decision, or it was something that he as an individual suffered because of lack of that translation of faith into action. We will talk next week about the death of Constantine and his desire to be baptized, because that's another fascinating topic, how he died and what was the circumstances of his death. He definitely, as a pragmatic, awful word, politician and person, he postponed his death until the moment of dying because he was certain that maybe he will sin again, and what's then? So his attitude was, yes, I would like to be baptized, however, I will wait for the moment when I know I'm leaving this world. So from that very fragmentary, very limited insights into his life, we can only say that the faith possibly was one of the tools that he will use to reaffirm his special status as the Pontifex Maximus, as a new archpriest in the Roman Empire, as a kind of bridge between divinity, Christ, and the rest of the people. That's how far we can guess about his faith and daily life.
Yes, there's a question at the back here. Hi there.
Hello, I really enjoyed the lecture today. I just have a question around understanding and kind of applying what we've learned as a Christian today. So I think the knowledge that I had on Constantine previously was quite limited, but this was really helpful to me to get a bit more of a rich understanding of the history. So I guess as a Christian today, as someone in their 20s, how can we sort of take what Constantine did, because I look at his work as really, really positive for, you know, Christians then and also Christians now. How can we take that and sort of like apply it to our understanding today? Like, are there ways that we can really practically take in what he did and how he helped the persecution of Christians and, I don't know, like apply it and help us like build a richer understanding of like the history of our faith today, if that makes sense?
Yes, absolutely. So before I answer this question, let me just take off my hat as a historian of early Christianity and now put my hat as a more pastoral person. And I think I can only say from my point of view, today's story is about incredible mess created by human beings, which yet again somehow is allowing God to interfere in the current world and bring some hope and solidarity and inspiration. So from our human point of view, I mean, even not Constantine, but yet again, when I think about persecution of early Christians, and I gave you this difficult outcome of that persecution, saying that some Christians were killed, and that's amazing, really. Some Christians were in prison, were waiting to be killed, but persecution finished before they were killed, so they were called confessors. Well, amazing people, because they were men and women, very often children, right? Then there were Christians who were buying illegally the documents just to show that they performed this act, but then after that they wanted to join the church, and the early Christian church was absolutely tearing itself apart, saying what are the rules of, once again, including those people, or they should be excluded from the church. So that's the third option. And the final option is actually about those Christians who, I would say, were sacrificing, but knowing that actually they are losing their identity as a Christians. Is that the end of our life? Is that any way back to our relationship with God? So this example of messy outcome of persecution, for me, is the greatest example as a paradox how God is able to deal with our mess. Here I take off my hat and I put the first one.
Any other questions? I don't think we have any online. I'll double check again. But a reminder that if the question after this evening strikes and you think, oh, why didn't I ask that during the course of the session? Please do email that to me, vicar@hccchurch.org, because next session we will begin with a very brief question time as we get going. But for now, can I just ask everyone to express again your thanks to Reverend Dr. Piot for all that you've shared this evening. Thank you so much.
Pleasure, absolutely pleasure. Thank you very much.
And so with that, really, we have set the scene for the council itself. We've seen how Constantine has directed this extraordinary journey toward unity and unification. But as he consolidated his power and perhaps began to know the intricacies and nuance of the Christian life a bit better and the Christian community, he saw actually there was a need to resolve some of these internal tensions, and we shall hear more about that next week. But friends, let's just close now with a moment of prayer. Let's pray. Gracious Father, we give you thanks for the life of the church. We hold before you its history, its complex and sometimes murky history. And we thank you that above all things and in all things, that you are in control, and we can rest safe in your everlasting embrace through your Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Friends, please do stay and join us for tea, another coffee, as long as it doesn't interrupt your night's sleep, or a wine or a beer. Please do feel able just to catch Piot and ask him why he didn't recommend his own books, which I certainly would have done. But please do come and catch him. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everyone.